Hola y buenos dias, cabrones. I've got some data and some observations about the future of diet and the vegan movement and food in general in America and in the world that I think is pretty interesting. So recently, Joe Rogan had on Chris Kresser and Dr. Joel Kahn, the 30-year vegan cardiologist and yogi and restaurant owner, who I've had on my podcast as well. You can go listen to that episode on the Plantriotic podcast or straight to the Joe Rogan Experience for the recent debate. And it was very highly anticipated. I was so excited for it, and I think Joel Kahn did an incredible job. There were so many mic drop moments, in my opinion, like when he kept on saying, well, you can either trust your fringe paleo science or trust the 21, pretty much out of 21, highest, most credible cardiology and health professional institutions like the American Heart Association and beyond that advocate for reducing saturated fat in the diet and reducing animal products in order to prevent heart disease and to prevent a lot of chronic diseases. So Joel Kahn kept on saying that, like, you can believe this fringe stuff or you can agree with the vast majority of the most credible health institutions that are currently operating in our world. But what I found was really interesting in that debate, and I listened to a lot of debates on nutrition, is that for every single piece of good science or data that Joel Kahn could represent from a epidemiological study or even of a more reductionist study, like proving that certain nutrients can turn off or on the proliferation of cancer growth, which has been done and shows that animal protein does feed cancer cells much faster and better than plant-based protein or plant-based foods in general. But for every single piece of data that Joel would represent, Chris Kresser could go in his little database in his mind of the studies that he's seen and reviewed, and he can pull out an equal amount of information that in a conversational way, without knowing who funded the study and all these things which are important but are hard to get to say in a debate, he could pull whatever Joel Kahn had, it seemed, in the debate, that Chris Kresser could either debunk that or bring in new information. One of the main criticisms that that Joe and Chris Kresser had against Dr. Kahn was that Dr. Kahn kept on referencing studies that were done in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, like landmark nutrition studies that still hold true today, but were like groundbreaking pieces of information back then. And Joe and Chris kept on laughing that off as if the vegan movement is like outdated and we're only looking at studies from 50 years ago. It's so not true. There's new studies and epidemiological studies, and anecdotal information. Go on YouTube, go on Mastering Diabetes, go on Forks Over Knives on the internet, and you can see testimonies of people every single day coming out and saying, hey, I've been living with type 2 diabetes or with clogged arteries and having heart attacks or strokes for many decades, and in about 3 weeks of going on a low-fat plant-based diet, all of those symptoms went away and I'm so much healthier. You can find those testimonies every single day. New stuff is coming on the internet. Go search for it. One thing that Joel Kahn said in the aftermath, like on Instagram and stuff, he said, there are so many studies to show that a low-fat plant-based diet reverses heart disease or diabetes, which is what I just explained. And he said, name me one study that shows that a diet of high saturated fat and high animal protein or animal products in a 3 to 4 week period reverses diabetes or heart disease. And I'm pretty sure, let me know in the comments if there are studies that show that, but I'm pretty sure there are tons of at least anecdotal instances that a plant-based diet reverses those diseases. I don't think that there is either anecdotal or scientific information to show that a high saturated fat or a paleo or a low carb diet reverses those diseases in a number of weeks, but please leave it in the comments if you have seen those studies. So getting back to what this video is really about, is that we in the plant-based movement, assuming that you're vegan, although of course not all my viewers are vegan, which is great, and I have a video coming out which is a message to all my non-vegan and meat eater followers, and the answer is I truly do love you too. Thanks for watching my channel. But a lot of us in the plant-based movement, we can live in a bubble, and we can assume that, wow, veganism is so trending, and there's so many more vegan restaurants, and oh my god, it's the future, and in 10 years the whole world's gonna be vegan, and everything's gonna be so great. And I hope that that's the case, but as somebody who lives out in the fringes, I travel the world in small towns my whole entire current life. That's what I do, and I've been able, I think, to get out of my vegan bubble, which I was in when I was living in college or in Berkeley, and just thinking that everyone around me was hip to the plant-based idea. And I'm not as confident about the short-term future of the vegan movement as maybe some are. I think long-term injustice never prevails and the truth will always come out. It just might take so much time, just as we have progressed as a human society immensely every single year, probably since the inception of our species. You know, the world 500 years ago, which was a much more violent and crazy place. Of course, there wasn't as much climate change, but there was a lot more, we're gonna come and kill and pillage your village. So there's differences. But getting back to the video again, what is in 2018 in a debate between a professional vegan cardiologist and another, I guess, professional who believes, I don't want to say opposite views, because both people in the nutrition world, the low carb people or the low fat people, they both think that eating vegetables is really good, unless you're of the carnivore diet or something, but we're not getting into that. So vegetables, we can all agree on that, but generally speaking, having differing views, Chris Kresser saying saturated fat and animal protein good for, necessary for good health, and Dr. Khan saying not true, you only need to eat plants. We can't trust science and data anymore, because these are two professionals who devote their life to mining through the data and the science and figuring out what is true, and we have differing views. And in a debate of 3.5 hours, we still cannot come out with a moderator. We cannot come out with an answer, and that is because in 2018, with so many studies and so much information and blogs and documentaries and so much information, we can't prove facts anymore. Studies in science do not prove facts. If they did, everyone would be following one diet because it would be the truth. But for every point that Dr. Khan brought up, Chris Kresser could find a study or an anecdotal piece of information that proved the opposite, and for everything that Chris Kresser did to prove, Dr. Khan could present something that proved and showed the opposite. So that's disheartening because, or you could say not, I think it kind of is, because, you know, math is satisfying because there's an actual answer. It's not really an opinion, unless you probably get into some super philosophical math, but we're talking normal human stuff. I would hope that science and nutritional studies, which seems like there should be an answer because every single animal on the planet has a diet that it evolved to eat. But we in the human world, a lot of professionals like Chris Kresser will say, there's not one human diet, there's not one size fits all. But there is one size fits all for every single other animal on the planet. Sure, there's little varieties, like this type of monkey likes this plum and this one likes a mango. But generally speaking, primates evolved to mainly eat fruit, and they're frugivores, thus their anatomical design and their teeth design, whatever. We humans are the same. We evolved from primates, and we've been eating lots of plants, and we do not have good hands or teeth to claw and rip through fur and thick skin, whereas carnivores like cats and snakes, they have adapted in order to eat these foods. We are so obviously more drawn towards plants and fruits and colorful sweet things than we are the bloody raw flesh of a recently dead animal or living animal, which is what carnivores like. They love the smell of shit and blood and guts, and they get right in there to that raw meat. We humans aren't doing that, so I would hope that we could find through studies and science an answer. And oh my God, we look at the plant-based movement and these doctors are curing people of heart disease, and there's actual evidence of it, but still, with all of that information, we don't know the answer anymore, because people on the other side can claim that we're all wrong, that it's outdated information, we're being emotional about it because we love animals and we're trying to skew the science. And then, we say the same shit about the people on the other side who are claiming that they have other results. So when it comes to that debate, it's disheartening because there really is no answer anymore. You cannot prove anything through science and data, unfortunately. Moving on, I have a few stats or other things to bring up. This is just talking about, are we really moving towards a rapidly vegan future? What is the state of the vegan movement in the world right now? Right now, about 2% of the American population identifies as vegetarian. That's 2 in 100 people. And only 1/2 of 1% of the American population, that's 0.5% of the population, is vegan. So a half a person out of 100 people, or you could say 1 person out of 200 Americans is vegan. When we look, that's pretty small. That's a pretty small percentage. When we look at Israel, which is the highest per capita of plant-based, plant-eating, animal rights people in the entire world, highest per capita percentage, 5% of their small country identifies as vegetarian or vegan. You could say that that's a good thing, that that's 5%, and one year it'll be 10%, and the some year it'll be 20%, and I agree, it is optimistic, but we also have to be real. The highest per capita vegan population is at 5% of the population, meaning 95% eat meat every single day. What else do I have? Oh, this is interesting. On Google Trends, if you play around with that piece of software, on Google, you can pin 2 words together and it just shows you over the Google searches what's bigger than the other, what's trending. I thought this was very interesting. The word vegan versus paleo, or vegan versus meat eating, or really anything vegan versus the opposite I could find, vegan crushed. People are searching vegan way more than they're searching for paleo, for eating meat, for carnivore. People are searching for vegan, and that is a very good sign. But when you search a low-fat diet, so let's talk about nutrition now, low-fat versus high-fat destroys. So this is interesting because people are interested in what veganism is, what it has to offer, but from a nutritional standpoint, we can kind of observe that the low-fat craze, which was a craze, I believe, like when I was growing up, the government was saying eat low-fat foods, and there was a lot, people were into eating low-fat, even before veganism was a big thing. That's now kind of the past, even though there's so much science to show that a low-fat diet is where it's at in terms of your best athletic performance, feeling good, preventing chronic diseases, and the high-fat movement, it's taken over. It is much more popular. People are more interested in learning about eating more of a higher fat diet, that maybe that is the future for weight loss and weight management versus a low fat diet. I would disagree with that based on the science, but that's just, I'm just showing you what people are into and what people are researching. And the last point I'll bring up about how veganized our world is really becoming is that I travel the world in these small rural places full time. And I've been in Mexico for 7 months now. I've traveled to dozens and dozens and dozens of cities and small towns, probably hundreds of small towns I've biked through at this point. Absolutely, multiple hundreds, maybe thousands. And I talk to people every single day. People ask me questions. I eat with people. I talk about being vegan. Like I'm not like totally solo and doing my own thing. I get in there. I meet people every single day. Meet new people, and I have met one vegan in Mexico. I've met vegans that I knew were vegan and we linked up online and stuff like that. But I have spontaneously, just from talking to a person, met who I didn't know they were vegan, and it turned out they were vegan. They were a cashier at a supermarket. It was like a kid, like a 17-year-old kid. I've met one vegan in 7 months, and I have met a whole lot of people eating meat and a whole lot of people who don't even know or think that vegetarianism or veganism is a viable option in their life. They have no idea. They either think that it's unhealthy to not eat meat and animal products, or that it's unattainable and it's just physically impossible and difficult, or that it's extremely expensive, which of course is the opposite, especially in a country like Mexico. The foods that I eat are so much more vastly cheaper than the food that meat eaters eat. Like when people go out here and buy milk or eggs or meat, those are always so much more expensive over here than rice, pasta, beans, potatoes, lentils, bananas, and even veggies. Just so dirt cheap here. And avocados, they're everywhere, and amazing mangoes. So people here really don't know what's up in terms of veganism being an option, in terms of diet nutrition, and it's the most obese population in the entire world here in Mexico. They recently beat America in that. So what I'm trying to say is that veganism is a trending concept. There's no doubt about that, that it's a growing movement. I'll say that. But to think that it's the only growing movement and we just have to sit back and relax and wait for the numbers and for us to evolve and everything to unfold, I think that that's a bad option. I think we need to be fighting harder than ever, putting out better content, better information, inspiring your classmates and your co-workers through events and protests or documentary screenings or whatever, because to think that we're just winning, it's just not exactly true. We have so much work to do in terms of making this movement continue to grow and educating people, because there's a lot of signs to show that the world of exploiting animals and eating meat, it's sticking around unless we have something to do about it. And the only thing that we can do, we can't switch people's diet. We can inspire. That's pretty much all we can do, but the way that we can inspire is through making YouTube videos, through nonviolent protests, through making music about animal rights, through making art, through studying, doing more scientific studies if that's your field, about diet and nutrition and about the ethics of animals, so that we can get more people to understand that animals have feelings. I forget this sometimes too, but I'm constantly reminded because I talk with people. Most people just walking through their day have never even thought once if a cow, chicken, or pig is like similar emotionally to a dog, which of course we know is. I know it is because I live on farms all the time and I interact with these animals in person, and I know 100% that cows, chickens, pigs, bunnies have almost identical ways of feeling pain, of loving their family, of having friends, of preferring things over others, all the reasons that we would never eat our dogs, essentially. Other animals have those traits too, but most people choose not to think about it. So we have a lot of work, my friends, and I am confident that the vegan movement will grow, but I'm not optimistic in seeing a vegan world in my lifetime, just based on the things I discussed in this video. Please leave your comments down below if you agree with me, disagree with me, have better information, more information. I would love to know this, and do whatever you can to promote the plant-based movement, or honestly whatever you think is right in the world, because justice feels good and injustice doesn't, and I don't think we're living in a just world right now. Which is why I make these videos, travel around the world and inspire people. So thank you so much for supporting. If you like what I'm doing, traveling the world, getting into these small towns, talking to people about animal rights, and making these entertaining videos of cycling on a vegan diet across the whole world, you can support Maggie and I on Patreon by pledging $1, $2, $3 per month on Patreon. That is literally my entire income source when you guys support me, so that I can travel this way. The minute that dries up, the trip is over. I'm not speaking in hyperbole. It's my only source of income. I don't really make any money on YouTube anymore, so thank you so much for supporting us on that. It really does mean a lot. Thank you. Much love. Dream Extreme.